This is a Rutke Mods video. Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to this episode of the Parts PC series. Now, the last episode was technically the finale, but I had filmed a finishing part to the video that I decided not to add into the finished episode. So I am making this the final wrap-up of the series, where I explain a few odds and ends that I didn't include in the last video. So anyway, sit back and enjoy. When I started this series, I told you that I built this computer for less than $250, and I said I wasn't really sure if it was actually worth it. Now that it all works, at least to a certain degree, I don't know if I'd consider it working 100% with the power switch thing, but it still starts every time you need it to, even if it takes a few seconds. Now that everything is working perfectly, was it actually worth it? Yes, I believe it was. It's a fully functional PC, which has a lot more power than her old system, and it's a lot more reliable, uses less energy and all this stuff, and it cost a lot less than trying to find her a Sandy Bridge board, which wasn't completely proprietary. Sure, it was a pain in the butt to get to work perfectly in a normal case with a normal power supply and make everything work correctly, but it works. Before we actually officially end this video, I'll show you this quick comparison of her old system. I ran a benchmark on a Geekbench 3 benchmark on back in, I think, 2014. Now, her hard drive still had that copy of Geekbench on it, the exact version. There was many more updates to 3, but I decided to run the same exact version of Geekbench so there wouldn't be any differences, other than, of course, the Windows being different. I ran it on Windows 7 back in 2014 and Windows 10 now. I don't think that made much of a difference. But if you look at this right here, you'll see that the old CPU versus the new CPU, it's vastly different. In fact, the new CPU is better in every way, and the old CPU was using 14 gigabytes of RAM, as you can see right here. The new CPU is actually using the same RAM, except the old CPU had one different type of XMS, I think that's what it's called, 2. It had 3 4 gigabyte sticks and one 2 gigabyte stick, which of course messed up the dual channel, and that may have been one of the reasons, but 775 CPUs in the first place weren't optimized for DDR3. They were more meant for DDR2 to begin with. So the 775 CPUs with DDR3, they can't use its full potential. And this PC is running the same 4 gigabyte sticks, only 2 of them instead of the 3, because I wanted it to run in dual channel. And as you can see right here, it didn't make any difference. The i5 is still more powerful than the Core 2 Quad that was in that board, the old board. In fact, that old board, now that we're back to looking at this computer right here, that old board over here will be the topic of a future set of videos, more than likely. I have already overclocked this CPU. This is still the same Q9650. It's not the overclocking QX9650, it's just the normal one. And right now I have it overclocked to, I think, 3.48 gigahertz. I believe so, by just overclocking the bus clock. And it's quite stable. It runs pretty darn good. And with the overclock and the extra voltage going to the board, it no longer freezes. Now, of course, I still replaced the board because it wasn't reliable, and I didn't want to have to overclock it or add more voltage and risk it dying on her again. So now we'll just experiment with the 790i board, and if it blows up, oh well. It's still a really old board from late 2008, early 2009. So if it blows up, it's not a huge loss, even though it's a very neat board that was way ahead of its time. It's still not a huge loss. So anyway, that is the end of this series. Completely. Thank you for watching this episode. This has been a Rutkin Mods video.